Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to those of you on the Eastern Seaboard. Good afternoon, good morning if you're on the Pacific Coast, good evening if you're in Europe, and welcome to today's webinar. So today we're going to be talking about growing your own green oil field. Now, we conduct these webinars every Thursday, and they're all at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can always find out about our upcoming webinars if you look on the front page of our website, which is www.costaricainvest.ie, and you can find the details of the upcoming webinars there. Now, we do also record the webinars, and if you look in the free downloads and media section of our website in this area here, you can access those recordings. Now, for those of you attending a webinar for the first time, you'll see a little control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and in that there's an area in which you can ask questions. So if any questions pop into your mind during the course of this webinar, please feel free to type them into that area there, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we possibly can at the end of the webinar. So, today we're going to tell you a little bit about a secret that Texan oil men already know. And that is that an oil field is a great investment and it provides regular income and increasing prices. But today we're going to tell you a little more than that. We're going to tell you about an opportunity that you probably don't know so much about, which is that a green oil field is an even better investment. It's a one-of-a-kind opportunity, and we do have limited inventory. Now, so what can you expect to find out from today's webinar? Well, we're going to talk about Costa Rica, real estate in Costa Rica, real estate purchase and real estate ownership. We're going to talk, of course, about biofuels. We're going to talk about our renewable energy farm in the southern zone, and there's a bonus available for those of you who are on this call this evening. Now, first of all, a little bit about me. I'm an expert at investing in Costa Rica. We've been involved in ecological hybrid investment and development opportunities for the past 4 years. The companies that we choose to work with all have a very high level of success, and we're sticklers for detail. We always do a very thorough due diligence before we agree to work with or represent any company. Now, our criteria when we're looking at a project is that we always include projects that have development land, which we combine with agricultural commodities. They have to have a green, eco-friendly and sustainable aspect to them. And we only work, as I mentioned, with high-quality companies that are reputable, with a strong track record, who we enjoy working with. Now, we're very fond of opportunities that give smaller investors an opportunity to get involved. People have been investing in the biofuel industry for many, many years, but it's mainly larger or corporate investors. However, we have an opportunity here today which is suitable for smaller investors, medium investors, and of course for larger investors as well. Now, we've all discovered to our cost, or at least I certainly know I have, that many of the traditional investment opportunities that I certainly invested in have proved very lacking. And the bottom line is those bank shares that I invested in, Irish bank shares to be precise, well, they're pretty much valueless now. I can use them for wallpapering my house, because they have no value beyond that. But if you had access to an investment, the first part of which doubles in value every 10 years, the second asset, Goldman Sachs says, is akin to turning the clock back to the 1990s and investing in the PC revolution. The third asset has historically seen average per annum returns of 20%, and together the combination of all of these assets together has provided a conservative per annum compound interest return of 38.2%, giving a 382% return on investment over 10 years. If you had access to an investment which combined these real assets in your name, would this be of interest? Now, what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about our renewable energy farm opportunity. And we'll be talking a little bit about the promoters of that and who are involved in it a little later. Now, many of you on the call today are familiar with Costa Rica, but let me give you a little bit of background. So Costa Rica is in Central America. It's the oldest democracy in Central and Southern America, with more teachers than policemen, and it has a literacy rate of 96%. This year, they're going to spend more than 25% of their entire national budget on education. Costa Rica has a fantastic climate. And people in Costa Rica live longer than most other places in the Western Hemisphere, with an average longevity of 79 years of age. Costa Rica contains over 5% of the world's biodiversity. That's an incredible 1 in 20 of every living thing on this planet lives in Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is the country that practically invented ecotourism, and it ranks really highly in a number of polls. They now rank third in the world in terms of environmental performance. 2 years ago, they were ranked fifth, or I should say now at this point, 3 years ago, they were ranked fifth, because that study is due out again this year. And that study is carried out every 2 years by Yale University. Costa Rica is ranked number 1 in the world in the Happy Planet Index. This compares the ecological footprint of a nation to its happiness. So the bottom line with Costa Rica is that it's a very happy population, and they do very little damage to the environment in pursuit of that happiness. And that study is carried out every year by the New Economics Foundation. Costa Rica is the 7th most politically and socially stable country in the world, and that's according to the Economist Intelligence Unit. And that's a figure that often shocks people. They just cannot believe that the 7th most politically and socially stable country in the world is located in Central America, but it is, and that country is Costa Rica. Costa Rica is the most prosperous country in Latin America. That study is carried out every year by the Legatum Prosperity Index. Now, Costa Rica has preserved more than 25% of its surface area as natural park and forest reserve, never to be developed. And they plan to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021, which is the 200th anniversary of their independence. More than 95% of their energy requirements come from renewable resources. And it's an amazing story how they've achieved this. 20 years ago, the Costa Rican government realized that there were 2 areas of government in conflict: the Department of Energy and the Department of the Environment. The Department of Energy wanted cheap energy, and that unfortunately often came as a significant cost to the environment. So 20 years ago, they put one minister in charge of both. And as a result of that decision, they took a 50-year view as to their energy requirements, and they invested hugely in hydroelectric, wind and geothermal power. At the time, other countries thought they were crazy. Oil was cheap and these technologies were very expensive. Now, 20 years later, Costa Rica produces 95% of its energy from these renewable resources, and other countries look to Costa Rica and the inspired decisions that they took 20 years ago. So Costa Rica is a very small country, but it's got very big goals. They plan, as I mentioned, to be carbon neutral as a nation by 2021. And to achieve this, they're going to have to plant more trees. Last year, they planted 7 million trees, which is more per head of population than anywhere else in the world. Now, to achieve their carbon neutrality, they're going to have to continue to preserve more land and plant more trees. That, of course, is going to reduce the amount of land that's available for development and put upward price pressure on that development land. Costa Rica is a very attractive tourist destination, and their tourism industry is worth over $2 billion per year to Costa Rica, and they intend to grow that further. At the beginning of this year, or the beginning of last year, I should say, there were 65,800 more tourists for the first quarter, and that trend continued throughout the year with an increase of 10.5% in 2010 when you compared it to 2009. But Costa Rica is not interested in just the one-off visitor. They want people to come again and again and preferably own a home in Costa Rica, and ideally spend those hard-earned dollars there rather than in other destinations. To do this, they've made the process of emigrating to Costa Rica very straightforward, and you and I have the same land and property ownership rights as a Costa Rican citizen, and that's enshrined in the Constitution. More than 1% of the population is already North American expatriates and retirees. And why are they looking to Costa Rica? Well, they're looking for a lower cost of living, safety, great healthcare, and a fantastic climate. The cost of living in Costa Rica is about 50% of the cost of living in the USA, and healthcare is a fraction of the price. So imagine living in a beautiful climate, in a safe place, with great healthcare for a fraction of your current cost of living. Now, Costa Rica is looking elsewhere to generate revenue, and it's looking to high-tech industry. A combination of lucrative tax breaks, a highly educated workforce, and low labor costs has successfully attracted many, many multinationals. So Costa Rica is very business-friendly. They have huge eco-aspirations. It's stable, it's safe, they have excellent healthcare. Let's talk a little bit more about the economy of Costa Rica. Were they affected by the recent global economic crisis? Well, yes, they were, but it was more of a knock-on effect rather than a direct effect. But they prepared and they put IMF funding in place should they need to use it. And the IMF did a study on Costa Rica at the beginning of last year, and they stated that economic growth rose in the second half of 2009, remained strong in the first quarter of 2010, and that economic growth in Costa Rica was firmly underway. Were the IMF correct in their assessment of where the economy in Costa Rica was going? Well, yes, they were. In the beginning of last year, the first quarter, exports were up by 16.8%. And in fact, the economy grew as a whole by 4.5% in 2010 when compared to 2009. And Reuters are predicting that the economy is going to grow by 5% in 2011. Now, let's talk a little bit about land prices in Costa Rica. Now, they've seen some spectacular increases over the past 20 years or so. Some areas, land prices have been up by hundreds, if not thousands of %. But there are two very big drivers which is going to drive land price growth in the short to medium term in Costa Rica. The first of which is baby boomer retirees. Over 100 million baby boomers are going to retire over the next decade. Some estimates suggest that up to 10% will seek to retire abroad. And when they look to retire abroad, what are they going to look for? Well, safety, good climate, quality healthcare, and a lower cost of living. Costa Rica ticks all of these boxes. Now, Costa Rica couldn't possibly take in 10 million American retirees, but a significant percentage will look to Costa Rica. Costa Rica only has a population of 4 million, and so there is a limited capacity to take these baby boomer retirees, and that's going to put prices up. The second big driver is that I mentioned already that more than 25% of Costa Rica is already zoned as natural park and forest reserve, never to be developed. Now, their aims to be carbon neutral as a nation means that they're going to have to plant more trees, and to do that they're going to have to preserve more land. And if you Google history or news about Costa Rica at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, you will see that they have secured funding to increase their preserved area from 25% to 26% of their national territory. So that process is already underway, and it's going to continue. So what have we got going on here? We've got increasing demand, we've got reducing supply, and that leads to prices only going one way, which is up. Of course, when it comes to land investment, there are three things to consider: location, location, location. And we're going to discuss that in due course. But what if we combined a land investment in a great location in Costa Rica with a very valuable commodity that's increasing in price daily? And that commodity, the International Energy Agency's 2010 World Energy Assessment, estimates that supply needs to increase by 400% over the next 20 years. Well, what we're going to talk about there are biofuels. And our partners in this project are United Biofuels of America. And United Biofuels of America have been selected by Shell Oil as one of the 25 top global energy entrepreneurs. So let's move on and talk about biofuels. Let's get right into it here. Now, so today we're going to talk about our renewable energy farm investment opportunity. And we're going to talk about investing in the future and how these factors we're going to talk about today make it a smart, ethical, and profitable investment. So we're going to talk about UBA's background in this industry. We're going to talk about biofuels, of course. We're going to talk about income land ownership in a biofuel hotspot. And we're going to talk about how combining these factors together makes a smart, ethical, and profitable investment. The name of the program is Renewable Energy Farms, and UBA, United Biofuels of America, are the primary promoter. United Biofuels of America is the first biofuel consultancy and development organization in Costa Rica, and they've been working in outreach and planning with different governmental bodies throughout Central America, and not just Costa Rica, although they are based in Costa Rica. They have been primarily focused for the last 4.5 years on R&D. They've been working on commercialization and deployment, more for the macro or large investor. They've 4.5 years of research and development, and most of that R&D has been focused on best practices in agronomics. Now, some of their awards partners and consortiums and members include Urch University in Central America. Most of the UBA agronomic team are either teachers or have graduated from Earth University. The Minister for Agriculture, or the Ministry of Agriculture, I'd say, or MAG, have been working with them for 4 years, and they actually sit on UBA's advisory board. Shell, as I mentioned, have recently selected UBA as one of the top 25 global energy entrepreneurs. Recope is the national fuel organization in Costa Rica. Now, the government recently privatized their biofuel requirements, and they privatized that to Recope. And Costa Rica has a very strong biofuel requirement. By 2012, they've given a commitment to have a 10% blend, and so Recope has been mandated by the government to purchase every gallon of oil grown in Costa Rica. International energy advisors have voted United Biofuels of America as the best investment in Costa Rica. Costa Rican News have voted United Biofuels of America best green company in Costa Rica. And of course, UBA works very closely with Day Group, which is one of the strongest real estate consultancy organizations in Costa Rica. Now, one of the big events is their Jatropha Harvest Experience. And the Jatropha Harvest Experience, this slide is actually not quite correct because this Jatropha Harvest Experience has been rescheduled to fall of this year. It says May there, but it's actually rescheduled to the fall of this year because Daniel Yepes from United Biofuels of America will be speaking in June of this year at the Globe World Green Energy Conference. Now, the Jatropha Harvest Experience is not just a straightforward conference. They actually bring people to a plantation and walk them through the entire Jatropha process. It's generally a 3-day event, and they have meet and greet parties, a full conference day, a full day on the farm, and several smaller events going on. And this year, as I mentioned, it's been rescheduled to fall of this year, and it's going to be in Colombia, in a beautiful area with a wonderful resort. They'll be working with their partners down there, and they're already developing over 30,000 hectares in this area. They're going to have their meet and greet program, full conference day, plantation tours, UBA breakfast with various investors, and in one of the events, they will be discussing this renewable energy farm opportunity. Primarily, the Jatropha Harvest Experience is to promote and facilitate biofuel development and investment throughout the region of Central America, and it brings together investors, developers, landowners, technologists, and researchers, governmental and educational organizations to promote what UBA call their Million Gallon Challenge. The Million Gallon Challenge came about a couple of years ago when United Biofuels of America were approached by the United States Department of Defense contractors, and they were developing a technology to convert Jatropha biofuels into JP8 or jet fuel. And their requirements were 1 million gallons a day. And so UBA began a very intensive research program to be able to supply them with that 1 million gallon requirement. Out of that, they came up with the Million Gallon Challenge, and they've been promoting that, of course, at their harvest experiences. United Biofuels of America have already over 80,000 hectares pledged in to be developed by strategic partners, micro-investors, macro-investors, renewable energy farms, and UBA realized a number of things when they were developing this program. And that was, and one of the most important of those things they realized was that they couldn't just rely on macro investment. And they had to approach micro-investors, and so they've come up with this renewable energy farm program. In the process of developing the Million Gallon Challenge, they came across some very important information. There's an extreme supply and demand gap. United Biofuels of America get daily requests for various amounts of oil per month, 40 metric tons, 25 metric tons, 10 metric tons, 50 metric tons, from various refineries and organizations all over the world. And quite simply, they are unable to supply them because they don't have enough plants in the ground. Supply and demand is continuing to grow because this is a mandated product. So more and more people, by law, have to involve themselves in biofuels and supplement their fuel system with biofuels. And there's simply just not enough plants in the ground. So now UBA are telling many of their macro investors that they have to guarantee their own supply because it's cheaper. Otherwise, they remain in the bid market and it's going to become more and more expensive. So in many cases, for macro investors, they're telling them they have to plant their own plantations because that's the only way they can guarantee their own supply. Anytime that you have a supply-demand ratio that's so extreme with a mandated product, literally this means you're always going to have end buyers, and the demand for the end products is going to be high. The solution is quite simple. UBA needs more plants in the ground and as many oil-bearing plants as possible. And so UBA decided that they needed to combine both micro and macro investors and have to look at different ways for commercial developments and cooperations. The renewable energy farms is one solution that meets all of these criteria. So what we're looking at here is a typical Jatropha plantation. We're going to talk a little bit more about Jatropha and what it is in a few minutes. This is an agrarian or agricultural parcel, and Jatropha grows very well in the tropics. The renewable energy farm is itself broken up into parcels, and these parcels include the land, the roads, the electricity. And these are some of the investment highlights in the renewable energy farms that we're going to talk about. There's a very low entry-level investment of just $35,000 for micro-investors. Micro-investor is somebody who UBA have classed as needing to invest less than about $350,000. Typically, UBA have been dealing with commercial deployments, large-scale deployments. But they were getting a large number of calls from smaller investors saying they had 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 to invest, and they wanted to invest in biofuels, and asking what could they do. Now, at that time, UBA didn't have the solution because all of their developments were commercial and on a very large scale. So on the one hand, you've got this extreme supply-demand gap that we've mentioned already. And on the other hand, you've got the demand from micro-investors looking to invest in biofuels. So what was generated? Well, the renewable energy farms. It's a low break-in investment, as I mentioned, with just $35,000 investment, which includes 5,000 square meters of titled property in Costa Rica. It's fully managed plantation of 800 income-producing trees. The biofuel income over the investment term is almost $50,000. That's the return the investor gets on his land parcel. Meanwhile, the property valuation is going to rise over the next number of years, and we're going to look at some of the factors affecting that also. Essentially, in this renewable energy farm opportunity, these parcels are producing an average of 58% return on investment. These are green oil fields producing high quality, already approved vegetable oils. UBA intercrop two main biofuel variant plants. One is Jatropha, that I mentioned already, and the second is Maca palm. These are proven feedstocks, and they only grow, and UBA only grow proven feedstocks. These two have proved very high yielding and profitable. Jatropha, for example, has been selected by the US Department of Defense for the #1 drop-in replacement for fuel. And since then, they've had a number of aviation companies flying with biofuels. As a matter of fact, next year, flights into Europe not using biofuel blends are going to be taxed. So again, it's a mandated market. Jatropha begins producing in the first year. Doing nothing at all, the plantation can produce up to 1,200 gallons per hectare. And it has over 40% oil content. Very importantly, Jatropha is not a food crop. It doesn't compete as a food crop, as for example, corn does in ethanol production, and it outperforms other feedstocks on return of investment and net energy. Maca is a very interesting palm. It produces multiple types of oil, all in high demand. It's very easy to grow, and it's native to Costa Rica. And it can produce up to 4,200 gallons per hectare. And it has a very high oil content of 60% or more. It's very easily intercropped with Jatropha, and it's a proven product already grown in Costa Rica. Here we're going to take a step back and talk about an interesting fact. Rudolf Diesel in 1893 created the diesel engine. He created it to run on biofuels, peanut oil specifically. In 1912, he presented this at the World Expo, where he quoted, "The use of vegetable oils for engine fuels may seem insignificant today, but such oils may become in the course of time as important as petroleum and coal tar products at the present time." And here we are now 100 years later with various mandates and protocols all over the world to grow biofuel, just like Mr. Diesel had predicted. Now, we need to produce more biofuels, and there's a number of reasons for that. Fossil fuel and biofuel prices will continue to rise dramatically over the coming decade, and analysts are predicting quite large increases. Well, as we've seen, the oil price is currently over $100 a barrel, and there are many reasons that oil price is high at the moment. First of all, we've got what they call peak oil. Peak oil is reached when the supply of petrochemical oils goes into terminal decline. Most experts said that this decade we have already reached peak oil, and this means that from this point onwards our supplies are going to slowly decline to zero at some point. Meanwhile, there are rising upstream and downstream costs. It costs us more every year, every month and every day to drill for oil, transport it and refine it. Experts had said that developing countries like China or India will overtake the US in terms of energy consumption. Well, they were right. They just didn't get the year right. Earlier last year, 2010, China became the #1 energy consumer in the world. India is rapidly behind them. And we have these developing countries as well as many others who have come onto the market rapidly and are continuing to grow at an exponential rate, driving fuel prices up. Goldman Sachs predicted $100 a barrel for petrochemical oil by 2011, and they're right, we're over $100 right now. And in the next decade, they are predicting $350 per barrel. But why are biofuel prices going to rise? Well, this is interesting because essentially it's been globally mandated. There are already 127 countries around the world that have already mandated biofuel development. The aviation industry has also mandated the development and introduction of biofuels. Now, the aviation industry consumes 60 billion gallons of fuel per annum. And as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be taxed in certain parts of Europe if they don't have biofuel bans. It's the same in the transportation industry. They've also been globally mandated. We have protocols such as the Kyoto Protocol, which has been moved on to Copenhagen and subsequently Cancun, which are driving further standards to be developed for biofuels. Costa Rica itself has a national biofuel program, and they're planning to reach carbon neutrality by 2021, and they want to have a 10% blend requirement by 2012. As I mentioned earlier, they privatized biofuels, and the company Recope looks after all mandated purchases of biofuels in Costa Rica. So, to fill this supply-demand gap and the demand from smaller investors, UBA went to their advisory board, explained that on one hand, they had this supply-demand gap, that there wasn't enough plants, that macro developers were not growing fast enough, and large developments were taking a long time to develop. On the other hand, there was a large number of smaller investors looking to invest, so they needed to come up with a program and some very specific parameters for that program. And the parameters were this: it had to be suitable for the micro investor, it had to meet the national fuel program demands, it had to be sustainable, it had to have a low entry point. The investor had to have security of title held real estate. There are a lot of opportunities out there in biofuel investment where you're simply putting dollars into a fund and you've no title ownership of anything. And this is a very important point for us to be able to offer investors: titled real estate security. Because not only does that provide security, it also provides exceptional appreciation potential. The other factor or parameter that was put in place was that the solution had to pay for itself in 10 years or less through the biofuel income. And they were looking for a combined return of investment of 300% or more. So they came up with their renewable energy farms in what they call hotspots. They sent out their team to find hotspots, which are a piece of property, land or area that's going to see rapid proven development growth over the next 5 to 10 years. And it also had to have the ideal growing conditions for biofuels. UBA have identified 4 or 5 hotspots in the region. And for our renewable energy farm in the southern zone, what's particularly interesting about that right now is that it's in an area called Buenos Aires, which is the county or canton it's in. The southern zone has not seen the development of the Costa Rica, and so is considered to be a strong area for future growth. If we look at some of the factors for the southern zone, it's very interesting in terms of land value. First of all, Costa Rica's third national airport has just been approved for Palma Sur, which is about 45 minutes away from the renewable energy farm. Now, we know what the track record is when a new international airport opens. There's one international airport in San Jose, which became overloaded, and so they developed a second one in the northern region in Liberia. What happened in that region was as soon as the airport development began, the land prices effectively quadrupled over the next couple of years, simply because of the improved infrastructure and access. This new international airport at Palma Sur is very exciting, as it's only the third one in Costa Rica. And as I mentioned, we already know what happens when airport traffic comes in. Farm is only about 40 to 45 minutes away from this airport. The other important point is that the second largest infrastructure capital expenditure program in the whole of Central and Southern America is going on in a valley just south of us in the southern zone. There's a hydroelectric dam that's going to feed regions both north and south in Central America, and it's going to be second only to the expansion of the Panama Canal in terms of capital infrastructure spend. Another important point to consider is that the southern zone is considered to be the best agricultural area in Costa Rica. And we already have, or UBA already have, Jatropha and Maca uva palm achieving very high yields in this area. It's also only an hour from Golfito on the Panama border, and this is a very large free trade zone. And it's also very close to the beautiful Osa Peninsula. The Osa Peninsula hosts the Corcovado National Park, which is the largest biological reserve in Costa Rica. Actually, the largest biological reserve in Central America. And it's less than an hour away. The renewable energy farm is less than an hour away from some of the top beaches in Central America. And some of these beaches have been ranked amongst the top 10 in the world. So there we can see the master plan. And let's talk a little bit more about the investment. So what does the investment consist of? Well, it's got biofuel producing Jatropha and Maca uva palm. It is an annual revenue and land appreciation growth investment. Now, for our projections, we've assumed a 10-year investment term. The security is that this is titled land in Costa Rica in your name, and the property size is a minimum of 5,000 square meters. And the investment is $35,000 US dollars. Let's take a look at the revenue forecasts. So let's look at the biofuel income, which is in the first column, as we can see here. You can see that Jatropha starts producing in the first year and continues for up to 50 years. At year 5 and onwards, the Maca uva palm kicks in, and effectively that doubles the return from then on. A very important point that you can see here is that the biofuel income total is slightly over $49,000, nearly $50,000 of income over the next 10 years. And this revenue reflects no increase in biofuel prices over that term. Now, we've already talked about why biofuels are going to increase in price, but we have not included any increase in biofuel prices in these projections. So we're being very conservative. Last year, the price for crude biofuel oil for Jatropha rose by almost 50% year on year. It's come back slightly over the last couple of months, but it was up by over 50%. Even if biofuels were simply to rise by another 50 cents a gallon over the next 10 years, that would take that return from $50,000 to over $60,000. The property valuation in this particular area, because of the infrastructure and the airport and the large hydroelectric dam, is going to see dramatic growth over the next 10 years. Once you make your $35,000 investment, we plant the trees, we put in the roads, electricity and water to each of these lots. Now, instantly, when we put those additional services to a lot in Costa Rica, that doubles the value of the land. Hence, after year 1, we take the valuation from $35,000 to 70,000. Now, we consulted with the consultants at Day Group and asked them what they thought that the land would perform by for the first 5 years whilst the airport is being constructed, and thereafter once the airport is in place. Now, they had suggested that 7.5% for the first 5 years and then 10% per year thereafter. So this is a very strong investment in terms of ROI. You have grown your investment to almost $200,000, or slightly over $200,000, I'm sorry, when you add your biofuel and your property valuation together. And that's a simple investment return of over 50% per annum. One important point to mention, after talking to many micro-investors in the past and surveying them, is that we were getting a lot of questions about how this compared to a condo investment, because many people were coming to Costa Rica and they were looking for income-producing property, and at that time the only option really was to invest in property or condo and try and rent it out over the next number of years until they were ready to retire and perhaps use it themselves. So we asked the question, how do you compare renewable energy farms to a condo investment? We drew up this slide to give a quick assessment of that scenario. So, an average condo in this area is about $220,000. So, by comparison, we've assumed an investment in 5 lots here, which would cost you $175,000. Now, using the same projection as we used in the last, which is 7.5% increase for the first 5 years, and thereafter a 10% increase, the land would be worth $770,000 in 10 years. And of course, then you've got your biofuel income as well, coming in on top of that, giving you about $245,000 in biofuel income. And you add it together, giving you a total value of over $1 million. How does that compare to a condo? Well, the average price of a condo in this area is about $220,000. As I mentioned, the land investment in our renewable energy farm is indicated to be worth about $770,000, but the land value on a condo in that same period would be scheduled to maybe double or slightly over double, which would be a $500,000. And it's a significant difference. Now, there are question marks. The experts don't know what a value of a condo in this area is going to be in five years' time. If more condos appear in the area, there are going to be more condos for rent, and that's going to drive the value down. The total income on the renewable energy farm is almost $250,000, as opposed to the condo, which is just $50,000. And again, there are question marks. The experts say that they base this figure around the fact that you're going to have to rent out this condo 2.5 times a month regularly and consistently for the next 10 years in a fairly competitive market to come up with that $50,000 in profit. The total value of the 5 lots compared to the condo is over $1 million. The total value, questionable, of the condo is about $550,000. But remember, with the renewable energy farm, you get 5 lots, ownership, title property, high growth area, more flexibility, because of course you can liquidate one of the lots whenever you need to. If you need cash, if you want to build a house, you can sell one lot to pay for the cost of building. If you need cash for something else, you can sell one of the lots. Most importantly, you've got those 5 titled piece of properties, and that's a little over 6 areas, as opposed to the condo where all you have is just one condo. And at the end of 10 years, you've got one 10-year-old condo, plus all the costs associated with that, and the questionability as to whether you can rent it 2 times every month consistently over the next 10 years. And of course, during that 10 years, you still got to replace appliances, there's ongoing maintenance, and all that good stuff. We have had a number of questions when we've looked at these comparisons. One of the points that we mentioned, of course, about the renewable energy farm is flexibility. And this is a very important part of our investment. It was one of the parameters we asked our team to come up with when they came up with the energy farm program last year. It had to be secure, it had to pay for itself over 10 years, it had to have the security of title property, and it had to be very flexible. We wanted to give the investor as much flexibility as possible in terms of what they want to do, whether they want to build, if they want to sell properties. So you can opt out of the biofuel program at any time. It's an opt-in program. If you opt out of the program, you can run your own house off the grid with the biofuel that's growing on your property. You can build your own house on a property at any time. This is a large area, 5,000 square meters. You can cut a small area in, build on that small area, and you've got a beautiful home in a beautiful plantation that looks like a tropical orchard. You can also opt to build and stay on in the biofuel program if you build your house. Isn't it nice to have a nice income coming in every year without you having to do that work? So, how do you get involved? Well, the steps are very simple. First of all, you just need to reserve your renewable energy farm investment part. You receive, fill out, and return your investment package forms. I beg your pardon, I've moved on a little too quickly there. Once that's completed, we send you out your Green Oilfield National Biofuel Certificate, and of course, you get your title certificate, which is on the National Registry. Now, this Green Oilfield National Biofuel Certificate is something you need for reforestation credits, and this is something we haven't talked about. And we also haven't talked about carbon credits, and both of these will be coming online for our investors over the next short period of while. So these aren't even factored into the equation. So, a quick summary of where we stand. The investment highlights. So it's a low-break investment, just $35,000. 5,000 square meters of title property, fully managed plantation of 800 income-producing biofuel trees, which include planting, harvesting, maintenance, management of the tree. Each and every year, UBA will plant, prune, put in the drip irrigation to make sure that the plants are producing the maximum yields. They harvest, process, and sell the product and return 100% of that to you, less a 10% management fee. So UBA charge you a 10% management fee. So essentially, you're getting by far and away the lion's share of the returns. And of course, it's fully managed. The property will more than pay for itself in 10 years. There's an almost 50,000 return, and that's at today's prices. And the property valuation on a 35,000 investment is over 120,000 for the same period. Remember, this is located in one of Costa Rica's primary hotspots in terms of real estate development and growth. This gives you maximum flexibility. It combines two growth markets in one investment, the biofuel market and the real estate market. Sales of your biofuel are guaranteed as it's a mandated product. And all these combined together are going to return you, well, a simple interest rate return of over 50% per annum, or if you take out your initial investment, about 38% annual return over and above your original investment. So these are some of the animals that are in this very beautiful area. This is the southern zone. Remember, Costa Rica has more than 5% of the world's biodiversity. Here are some retired people enjoying themselves. Okay, now, I had mentioned that there are some special inclusions for those of you who are attending this webinar today. If you decide to invest, UBA will include in your investment a Costa Rican SA. A Costa Rican SA is a limited company. If you're investing in property in Costa Rica, you should, as a general rule, hold your property in a Costa Rican SA. There are a number of reasons for this. Number one, there's no capital gains in Costa Rica, and this ensures that any capital gain that you make is not getting taxed. If you held the land in your own name, it might be you might be adjudged to have made an income and be charged income tax. So it avoids that. Number two, when it comes to selling your land on, it makes the process very quick and easy because you're just simply selling shares in your own Costa Rican SA. You don't have to title transfer. And that Costa Rican SA typically would cost about $500 to $750 for you to set up. So that is included in your price. Secondly, the UBA will give each and every purchaser who decides to take action on the basis of tonight's webinar a ticket to the Jatropha Harvest Experience. And the Jatropha Harvest Experience, as I mentioned, has been rescheduled for fall. Alternately, there will be another Jatropha Harvest Experience in Costa Rica next year, and if you would prefer to attend that, you can have a ticket to that. Cost of those tickets is US $1,500 each. So, How do you get involved? Well, it's easy. Just send us an email to info@costaricainvest.ie. Excuse me. Indicate the number of lots that you are interested in. Send us your name and your phone number, and we'll touch base with you as soon as possible. Now, I know you'll have some questions, and we'll be delighted to answer those questions for you and really deal with that. But if you're seriously interested in this investment, you should open up your email right now. Send an email to info@costaricainvest.ie. Include your name, your phone number, and the number of lots that you're interested in, and we will revert to you as soon as possible. Okay, I did mention that we would be able to take a few questions, although I see we're running slightly over on our time. So we'll just perhaps take 5 minutes of questions here and get through as many of those as we possibly can. Okay, I do see we've got some questions in here. Okay, the first question that we have is, what are the additional investment costs? Okay, now there are some additional investment costs to be aware of. First of all, your entry-level investment is $35,000 US dollars. At closing, there is a notary charge of 3%, which is $1,050, and a legal charge of $500. So that's an additional $1,550. Now, going forward, as I mentioned earlier, UBA manage and look after and sell your biofuels for you, and to do that, they charge you 10% of your biofuel return per annum. That's automatically deducted per annum. Each and every year, you will receive a biofuel production statement on the 31st of December, and you will receive your payment, the 90% of that, within 14 days of that. So that you will receive that every year. The other charge to be aware of is that there is a homeowners association. The homeowners association look after the common areas, look after security in the renewable energy farm, and that homeowners association fee is $300 per year or $25 a month. But that charge only starts in year 2. There's no charge for year 1. There's no charge for year 1. Okay. One other small charge to be aware of is that there is property tax in Costa Rica. Property tax is 0.25% of the value of the property. So on a $35,000 property, I think that's slightly less than $90 a year. So not a very big investment. Okay. Let's have a look at the next question. Okay. Can I build on the land myself if I wished? Absolutely. The contract with Day Group, or the sellers of the land, is that they have to have the roads, infrastructure, electricity, water, everything in place within 2 years to your lot. Once that's in place, you can certainly build. You could build earlier if you wished. There may be an additional cost to getting those services to your land, but you could build earlier if you wished. And there are all sorts of options for you. So you could, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps opt out of the biofuel program, build your home, and then use the oil generated from your own Jatropha and Maca plants to perhaps run a generator, and you could effectively run your house off-grid. Or alternatively, you can build your house, live in this beautiful orchard, and have a regular income coming in without you having to do the work. So that's always good. The next one is, can I sell my land at any time? Yes, absolutely. You own the land, you own the Jatropha, you own the Maca. It's in your name. It's in your Costa Rican SA name, and you own the shares in that. So of course you can sell it at any time. You own it, you can sell it. What is the 10-year period is the next question we have. Okay, I think this probably refers to our projections where we mention a 10-year investment period. The 10 years is just a nominal period that we picked, a round figure, 10 years. But of course, you own the land. This is not a lease. You own it. You own it forever, in perpetuity. You own the Jatropha. And so we just ran the projections out for 10 years. And in fact, if you run the projections out for 20 years, the returns get even more lucrative because, remember, the Jatropha produces very little for the first year, and then it increases until it gets to full production in year 4. And of course, the Maca produces nothing at all for the first 4 years. It only starts to produce in year 5. So running from year 5 to year 20, the returns are even stronger. The returns are even stronger. Okay. I think we should, because I have run slightly over on time, so I have given the 5 minutes to those questions. I do see other questions in here, and what we'll do is that we will respond to those questions separately and individually, and thank you very much for sending them. So again, if you're interested in this investment, you really should take action. And to take action is simple. Just send us an email to info@costaricainvest.ie, include your name, a phone number we can contact you on, and the number of lots that you may be interested in. We will register your interest, and then we will get on the phone, have a chat with you, discuss your investment needs, really get to understand you. And then if this is the opportunity for you, and if it suits you, then you should get involved. You have the combination here of regular income from the biofuels in a mandated, not only locally mandated, but globally mandated market. With the increasing demand for the biofuels, you have the land in an excellent location, a location that's going to see improved infrastructure, a new airport, increased development. It's going up in price. That combination could be the perfect combination. There is the third aspect, the aspect we haven't even factored in, which is the carbon credits and the reforestation credits. These have a value. We have not even factored them in as yet. And remember, all of our biofuel projections are based around the biofuel price as it was, in fact, 3 months ago. So it's not even today's biofuel price. It's actually a biofuel price from 3 months ago. So we haven't factored in any increase in price. As I mentioned, and as you saw, the biofuels are projected at that old price to give you a return of about $50,000 over 10 years. But if it were to just go up by 5% per annum, that would increase the return over that 10 years to $66,000. Remember, you've only paid $35,000 for your investment. Combine that with that increasing land price, you have a spectacular investment. So take action now. Send us an email to info@costaricainvest.ie. Include your name, your phone number, the number of lots that you're interested in, and we'll be in contact with you. So everybody, thank you very much for attending, and apologies that we ran slightly over on our time, and have a great day.